Once upon a time, in a kingdom where the wind carried whispers of old magic and the trees held secrets in their roots, there was a girl whose beauty rivaled the morning sun. Snow White, with her raven-black hair and skin as pale as fresh-fallen snow, had escaped the wrath of her wicked stepmother, the queen, and found refuge in a small cottage nestled deep within the enchanted forest. Here, she lived with 7 dwarves, each as unique as the stars in the night sky. Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. They had become her family, her protectors, and her dearest friends. For a time, life was peaceful. The dwarves mined the earth for precious gems, and Snow White kept their home warm and filled with laughter. But shadows crept ever closer. The queen, whose jealousy burned hotter than dragon's breath, had not given up. Through her enchanted mirror, she had discovered that Snow White still lived, and her hatred festered like a poisoned wound. She sent her huntsmen to search the forest, determined to end Snow White once and for all. One evening, as the moon hung heavy in the sky and as the wind whispered through the trees, the eldest dwarf, Doc, rushed into the cottage, breathless. "The queen has sent her huntsmen. They're searching the woods as we speak," he warned. "They've been seen in the valley. They'll find us before sunrise." The dwarves trembled at the thought. They had no magic to protect themselves, no weapon strong enough to stand against the queen's dark forces. Snow White, however, did not panic. A strange warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she did not understand but knew was important. "I will protect you," she said softly. "I don't know how, but I can feel it. I have power inside me. If you trust me, I can keep you safe." The dwarves exchanged uncertain glances. They had always believed in Snow White, but what could she do against the queen's magic? Still, they nodded, placing their faith in her. The dwarves looked at her with a mix of confusion and hope. "Protect us? How?" Bashful asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Snow White took a deep breath. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I feel something inside me, something powerful. If you trust me, I can keep you safe." Grumpy frowned. "Snow White, you're brave, but you're just one person. What can you do against the queen's magic?" Snow White hesitated, searching for an answer. And then the warmth inside her grew. It spread through her limbs like sunlight spilling across the horizon. Her hands tingled, her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She felt something beyond herself, a force both unfamiliar and yet deeply connected to who she was. Doc, ever the leader, stepped forward. He studied her closely, his wise eyes narrowing. "You truly believe this, don't you?" She met his gaze. "With all my heart." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Doc nodded. "Then I trust you." The others gasped. Grumpy took a step back, shaking his head. "Doc, are you mad? We don't even know what she's talking about." But Happy, usually the most carefree, spoke up next. "I trust her too." Bashful hesitated, then nodded. Sleepy rubbed his eyes, murmuring, "Feels right, don't it?" Sneezy, still sniffling from the cold air, gave a small nod. Even Dopey, who rarely spoke, smiled and took a step closer. That left Grumpy. "You don't have to," Snow White told him gently. "But I won't force you either." Grumpy let out a heavy sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "I got a bad feeling about this," he grumbled. "But fine. If I'm gonna go down, might as well be with you." Snow White smiled, though her heart pounded. She turned to Doc first. The warmth inside her was stronger now, guiding her. Slowly, she reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. A golden glow spread from her fingertips, wrapping around Doc like liquid sunlight. His eyes widened, but he did not resist. Instead, he exhaled softly, as though some great weight had been lifted from him. And then he was gone. The other dwarves cried out, stepping back in alarm. "Where did he go?" Happy gasped. Snow White staggered slightly, pressing a hand to her chest. Doc wasn't gone. He was here, inside her stomach. She could feel his presence, his thoughts, his wisdom, like a whisper in her mind, like a second heartbeat. "I am with you," his voice echoed softly. Snow White turned back to the others, eyes wide with realization. He's safe. The dwarves exchanged nervous glances. It was unnatural, impossible, and yet Doc had trusted her. One by one, they stepped forward. One by one, they vanished into the golden light. As each soul joined her, Snow White felt herself and her stomach expanding. She carried them inside her, their thoughts, their strengths, their very essence, and inside of her ever-growing stomach. By the time Dopey stepped forward and melted into the light, Snow White opened her eyes. The forest was eerily silent. Snow White stood outside the now empty cottage, her breath curling in the crisp night air. Though she was alone in body, she felt anything but lonely. The warmth of the dwarves, her family, hummed within her, their spirits woven into her own. Their voices echoed softly in her mind, not as separate entities but as a chorus of thoughts, feelings, and strengths blended into one. "They'll be here soon," Doc's voice murmured. "Aye," Grumpy grumbled. "And they won't be bringing flowers." Snow White closed her eyes. Her senses stretched out farther than ever before. She could hear the rustling of leaves in the distance, the cautious footsteps of men weaving through the trees. The Queen's huntsmen were closing in. Their torches flickered between the trees, casting ominous shadows along the ground. They had found the cottage. "What now, lass?" asked Grumpy. "We fight," she answered. A familiar fear should have gripped her then, the kind she had felt when she first fled from the Queen, the terror of being hunted, powerless, small. She took a deep breath, and the presence of the dwarves surged within her like a shield. Strength flowed through her limbs, her senses heightened beyond human comprehension. The huntsmen moved in groups of 3, sweeping the clearing with wary eyes. Their swords gleamed under the moonlight, their armor dull with travel. "She was spotted near here," one of them muttered. "Search the house." 2 of them kicked open the door, their torches illuminating the empty space. The cottage, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now a ghost of itself, silent, abandoned. "Where is she?" one of them grumbled. "The Queen will have our heads if we return empty-handed." Another man, the leader of the group, frowned. His grip tightened around the hilt of his sword. "Something's not right." The moment the words left his lips, the air around them shifted. A presence loomed in the darkness, unseen yet undeniable. A whisper in the wind, a pressure in their chests that made their hearts pound just a little too fast. And then, Snow White stepped from the shadows. Her hair, once tangled from a life in hiding, now flowed like silk, catching the moon's glow. Her dress, torn and simple, shimmered faintly, reflecting the golden light that pulsed beneath her skin. Her eyes, no longer wide with fear, glowed softly, an unnatural radiance that sent chills through the huntsman. Something about her was wrong. The lead huntsman took a cautious step back, his instincts screaming at him to run. "You, what are you?" Snow White did not answer. She only lifted her hand. Golden light swirled at her fingertips, soft and warm like morning sunlight, yet humming with undeniable power. The men froze as an invisible force settled over them, pressing against their lungs, their limbs. Not painful, no, not yet, but enough to make them understand. She gazed at the huntsman, her expression unreadable. The old Snow White would have begged them to leave, pleaded for peace. But she wasn't the old Snow White anymore. She stepped forward, and the men flinched. "Let them go," Doc's voice whispered in her mind. "Or turn 'em to dust," Grumpy suggested. Snow White took a slow breath. Power swirled at her fingertips, waiting, listening for her command. And then, she closed her fist. The golden energy snapped out like a wave, but instead of striking, it pushed. A great wind howled through the clearing, lifting the huntsmen off their feet and hurling them back into the darkness of the forest. They hit the ground hard, their weapons clattering as they scrambled to their feet, eyes wide with terror. "Tell the Queen," Snow White said, her voice calm but carrying through the trees like a bell. that I am not afraid of her anymore." The men did not hesitate. They turned and ran, disappearing into the woods as fast as their legs could carry them. Snow White stood in silence, the last traces of golden light fading from her skin. The air was still once more. "They will report back to her," Doc murmured. "Good," Snow White replied. "Let her know that her reign is ending." She turned toward the dark horizon, where the Queen's castle loomed in the distance. The time for hiding was over. The hunt had begun. And now, it was Snow White who would be doing the hunting. In the grand obsidian halls of the castle, Queen Ravina stood before her enchanted mirror, her pale fingers gripping the frame so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The room was dimly lit by flickering torches, their flames casting eerie shadows along the black marble walls. She had felt it, the shift. For weeks, she had sensed an unease creeping beneath her skin, a whispering disturbance in the magic that bound the land. Now, the air itself was thick with something unnatural, something ancient, a presence that did not belong. The mirror, usually an unwavering source of truth, trembled before her. The Queen narrowed her eyes. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall," she whispered, her voice like silk laced with steel. "Who is the fairest of them all?" The glass shimmered. Ravina expected the answer to be the same as always, her own name, her own face. The universe had long confirmed her supremacy. No one could rival her. But tonight, the mirror did not answer immediately. Instead, it twisted. The silver surface darkened as if something foul had seeped into its depths. A soft hum filled the chamber, a soundless vibration in the Queen's bones. Then, slowly, an image took shape. A figure stood beneath the moonlight, cloaked in a glow that was not of this world. Her skin was luminous, her hair catching the starlight like strands of woven silk. She was draped in something resembling her old dress, but it was different now, its fabric shimmering with golden veins, pulsing as though it were alive. And her eyes were aflame. Power. "She is no longer the girl you tried to kill," the mirror spoke, its voice fractured and strained, as though forced to say the words against its will. "She carries 7 souls, 7 hearts. She is more than you, more than any." Ravina took a step back, her breath sharp. No. She felt it then, a presence stretching across the land like golden roots threading through the very fabric of existence. The magic was foreign, unnatural, and yet it was more powerful than anything she had ever encountered. The Queen clenched her fists, her long nails digging into her palms. "This is impossible." The mirror shuddered. "She is coming." Ravina's breath hitched. The chamber seemed smaller now, the walls pressing in. For the first time in over a decade, a cold, unfamiliar sensation twisted in her chest. Fear. But fear was a thing for the weak. Her expression hardened, and with a flick of her wrist, dark energy coiled from her fingertips, slamming into the mirror. The glass cracked, shattering into a spiderweb of fractures. The image of Snow White distorted, splitting into 1,000 tiny reflections. The Queen turned sharply, her midnight black gown swirling behind her. If Snow White had become something greater, something new, then so be it. The Queen was no stranger to power, and she would crush this thing the girl had become, just as she had crushed the old Snow White. She strode through the castle halls, her voice ringing through the stone corridors. "Summon the huntsman. Double the guard. Seal the gates." The servants scurried like frightened mice, their heads bowed as they rushed to fulfill her command. Above them, storm clouds gathered, thick and black, swirling as if the sky itself bent to the Queen's fury. The battle had begun before a single sword was drawn. Snow White was coming, and Queen Ravina would be ready. Snow White walked through the forest, unseen by mortal eyes. The Queen's huntsmen patrolled the woods, torches in hand, but none of them so much as turned in her direction. "They can't see us," Bashful whispered inside her. "No," Snow White realized. "I am beyond their reach now." With silent steps, she passed them and emerged into the open valley. Beyond, the castle loomed, its spires black against the sky. A storm brewed overhead, summoned by the Queen's dark magic. The dwarves, though now a part of her, still worried. "Are you certain, lass?" asked Grumpy. "She won't stop hunting us," she replied. "We must stop her first." She lifted her hands, and golden light swirled from her fingertips. The power she held wasn't just hers, it was theirs. The 7 dwarves, their souls entwined with hers, were her strength. And so, with the weight of 7 hearts beating as one, Snow White marched toward the castle. The castle gates creaked open as Snow White stepped inside. The torches lining the halls flickered violently, their flames sensing her presence. At the far end of the grand chamber, Queen Ravina stood waiting. Her gown billowed like living shadows, her fingers twisting with dark magic. "You should not have come here, child," she spat. "You do not know what you've become." Snow White took another step forward. "I do now, and you cannot stop me," the queen sneered. "Then die knowing your foolishness." She hurled a bolt of dark energy, the power of curses and nightmares. It would have burned through flesh, reduced her to nothing. But the moment it touched Snow White, the light inside her flared. The spell dissolved before it even reached her. The queen gasped, stumbling back. What are you?" Snow White lifted her hand, golden energy swirling in her palm. "I am no longer alone. I carry the hearts of 7 within me." The queen shrieked, summoning every dark spell she knew. The walls of the castle trembled, the air thick with sorcery. But none of it mattered. Snow White walked forward, unshaken, unafraid. The dwarves whispered within her, giving her strength, guiding her. She raised her hand, and the light consumed the darkness. The queen screamed as her own magic was unraveled, her body turning to dust. And then, silence. The queen was gone. The castle, once a place of fear and cruelty, now stood quiet. The dark clouds parted, and for the first time in years, the sun bathed the land in golden light. Snow White stood at the castle's balcony, looking out over the kingdom. She could feel the dwarves stirring inside her, their presence warm, content. "What now?" Happy asked. Snow White smiled. "We rebuild." And so, Snow White and her 7 hearts watched over the land, ensuring that light would never fade into shadow again.